Thomas and the Beanstalk. It was the end of a very busy day on the island of Sodor. The engines were settling down in their ends for the night. Thomas the tank engine thought that it would be nice to tell his friends a bedtime story. He told James and Percy his favorite fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. I like the part about the magic beans, Percy peeped when the story was over. I wish a magic beanstalk would grow here on Sodor. Do giants like railway engines? James wondered. The next day, Thomas picked up a load from the farm. Sacks of beans, Thomas chuckled. Just like in my bedtime story, he peeped. Suddenly, Diesel 10 appeared around the bend. He was speeding out of control. Get out of my way, little toy tank engine, Diesel 10 roared. Thomas couldn't move fast enough. Diesel 10 bashed into him and raced off. Thomas crashed onto a side rail and tipped over. Some of his cargo spilled out of the trucks. Thomas awoke dazed and confused. He noticed some beans scattered in the ground next to the tracks. Suddenly, a tiny leaf shot straight out of the ground. Right before Thomas's amazed eyes, the tiny leaf grew and grew into a big plant. And then into a towering beanstalk, stretching high up into the sky. Those must have been magic beans after all, Thomas exclaimed. And Thomas could hardly believe it. The giant beanstalk was drifting from the one in his story. Thomas could hardly believe it. The beanstalk was different from the one in his story. It had railway tracks, circling all the way to the top. Thomas wasn't sure what he should do. It was a little scary, but he decided to be brave. He would ride up those tracks to see what was at the top of the beanstalk. Thomas started up the beanstalk. Around and around and up he climbed, and then he climbed some more. It seemed like the beanstalk went on forever. Finally, Thomas reached the top. He saw an amazing sight. There, high above the clouds, Thomas discovered a giant magical world. The flowers, the grass, even the sand, and of tracks leading up to a huge castle made Thomas feel very small. Like a child's toy engine. Plus my buffers, he gasped. Everything's so big. Thomas couldn't help wanting to explore. He followed the tracks into a castle courtyard. There, he realized he was traveling on a Sodor-sized railway. All the buildings, trees, and railroad signs were just the right size for Thomas. It was a toy train set. Thomas looked around at the castle with its impossibly high gates and turrets. Why is everything else so big? And Thomas wondered, and aloud. Then Thomas heard a sound of a steam whistle. The whistle was the most beautiful. The whistle was the most beautiful Thomas had ever heard. It sounded almost musical. He looked around, but he couldn't tell where it was coming from. At that moment, the ground beneath him began to shake. Thomas tried to hide behind what looked like a huge flower. But when it lifted up and flew away, Thomas saw that it was an enormous butterfly. Suddenly, a gigantic foot landed in front of him. Thomas looked up and saw a man towering over the entire courtyard. It was a giant. He was a giant, just like the giant from Thomas's bedtime story. Thomas had never seen anything this big. Before he could make a move, he heard a little voice calling to him, "Quick, over here!" Thomas turned and saw a gleaming gold steam engine on the track ahead of him. She was trying to get his attention. And Thomas started to roll toward her, but before he could speak to her, the giant reached down with his enormous hands and picked up the little engine. Then he put it down on another track. The giant pushed the gold engine back and forth on the track. All the while, he made peep and whistle noises in his booming voice. Then Thomas realized the giant was playing with a little engine, as if she were a toy. Suddenly, a huge horn blasted nearby. Thomas looked up and saw Diesel 10 approaching. He was enormous too, big enough for the giant to ride in himself. The giant put down the gold engine and stomped over to the huge Diesel. Thomas saw his chance. He hurried over to the gold engine. "What is this place?" Thomas asked her. "It's the giant's castle," the gold engine replied. "I don't like it here, and I want to get away." She told Thomas that she had been taken from her home, where she was a very special engine. "I run on golden coal," she said. "But here, I'm just the giant's favorite toy. I wish I could go home." Thomas wanted to help the golden engine. Thomas wanted to help the gold engine. I don't know how to get to your home from here, but I can take you back into mine," he said. Thomas told her about the island of Sodor, where everything was the right size for them. "You should be safe and happy there." "Sodor sounds wonderful," the gold engine said. "I climbed up a giant beanstalk to get here," Thomas said. "It's this way." He headed toward the courtyard gate. But after a few feet, he slowed and stopped. He was out of coal. "I must have used it all climbing the beanstalk," he cried. "Take some of my golden coal." The gold engine told him. "Quickly, I think I have just enough for both of us." With a special gold coal in his hopper, Thomas felt magical. His pistons popped faster than ever as he raced toward the gate, and with a gold engine following close behind him. At that moment, the giant made a loud sniffing noise. "I smell steam," he said. He turned and saw the two little engines trying to get away. His thunderous voice boomed. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I see two engines on the rug. If they're toys or if they're real, I'll now have two engines to steal. The giant and Diesel 10 chased the giant and Diesel 10 chased after Thomas and the gold engine, and as they steamed out of the courtyard, "Get back here, little toy tank engines!" Diesel 10's booming voice rang out. Thomas sped up, heading toward the Beanstalk. If they could just get back to Sodor, he knew everything would be all right. Thomas and the gold engine barreled down on the tracks, spinning around and around the Beanstalk. "We made it! We're on Sodor! We're home!" Thomas cried as they reached the bottom, feeling a little dizzy. But when the two engines looked up, they were shocked to see that the giant was coming down the Beanstalk after them. "Oh no!" Thomas exclaimed. "Sodor is full of little engines. The giant will want us all for his toys." Thomas thought quickly. He backed up and bashed into the Beanstalk with all his might. He saw his friends James and Percy in the distance and called to them for help. Soon all four engines were slamming into the Beanstalk over and over again, as hard as they could. Finally, it looked like the Beanstalk and the giant were about to fall. Thomas closed his eyes, bracing for the crash. Thud. Thud. Thomas opened his eyes and felt himself being tugged. Two engines were pulling him upright. Percy and James were still there, but the little gold engine was gone. "What happened?" Thomas asked. "Where's the Beanstalk?" "Beanstalk?" Percy asked. What Beanstalk? We came to help when we heard about your crash with Diesel 10. Thomas told his friends about everything that had happened. And the Beanstalk, the magical world above the clouds, the giant, and the special gold engine. It all seemed so real, he said softly, but it must have been a dream. I guess giants really do like railway engines after all, James said, and with a chuckle. "Thomas, look," Percy said. Thomas's driver was holding up a single piece of gold-covered coal. He found in Thomas's hopper. The driver looked puzzled. "What is that?" James asked. Thomas gasped. He didn't know what to say, because it had all been a dream, hadn't it? The end.